I noticed her before she noticed me. Not in the obvious way, not the kind of noticing you'd admit to. It was smaller than that. The way her fingers lingered on the rim of her coffee mug before she took a sip, or how her gaze stayed just a second too long on the rain sliding down the window. We were sitting at the far ends of the same worn-out cafe bench, angled just enough so that if either of us moved, we'd brush knees. I was pretending to scroll through my phone, but really, I was waiting. She wasn't what most people expected when they said the word beautiful. She was different, real. Her hair was tied back like she didn't care if it was perfect, and she had the faintest lines around her mouth, the kind you get from laughing at the wrong moments in life. When she looked at me, it wasn't quick or shy. It was steady, a quiet measuring. I couldn't tell if she was amused or curious, and I didn't ask. "You always sit like that?" she asked finally, her voice low, almost teasing. "Like what?" I straightened up. Her eyes flicked down at my posture, one shoulder leaning forward, my hand tight around my cup. "Like you're ready to run." I smiled, but it felt uneven. "Maybe I am." Her mouth curved slightly, then she tilted her head, just a little, and said, "I like how you look at me." It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like she'd been holding the thought in for a while and decided to let it slip only because the air between us was warm enough now to hold it. The space felt smaller after that. The hiss of the espresso machine faded, replaced by the slow beat of my own pulse. "You shouldn't," I started but stopped. She raised an eyebrow. "Shouldn't what?" "I don't know." I shook my head. "Say things like that." "Why?" She leaned back, sipping her coffee, pretending she didn't just pull something out of me. "Because I'll think about it later. Because I'll wonder if you meant it, or if you were just being kind. Because the way you said it feels like a promise I'm not sure I can handle." But I didn't tell her any of that. I just said, "It's dangerous." Her smile didn't fade. Maybe I like dangerous. I wanted to ask her what that meant, but the silence between us was already answering in its own language. She was older, more certain, and yet there was something in her eyes, something that looked suspiciously like loneliness, that made me believe I wasn't imagining this connection. She pushed her mug aside, brushing an invisible crumb from the table. "How old are you?" 22. A faint laugh, almost under her breath. "You look younger." "And you look—" I stopped before finishing. She gave me the kind of look that says, "Go on." "I look what?" "Like you've lived more than most people ever will." Her expression softened, but she didn't thank me. Maybe she knew I wasn't trying to flatter her. The rain outside slowed, but neither of us moved. I realized I didn't want to. It felt like we'd been in this small corner of the world for a long time, like time had folded in on itself just to keep us here. She opened her mouth to say something else, but just then, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen, and my stomach tightened. Her eyes followed mine. "Is it bad?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, wondering if whatever came next would pull me away from this moment, or straight into it. The phone kept buzzing, but I let it ring out. She didn't press. She just sat there, watching me the way someone might watch a tide come in, patient, as if she already knew I wouldn't explain. "I was married once," she said suddenly, as if we'd been mid-conversation. 15 years. 2 kids. One's your age. The words sat heavy between us. My throat went dry. I thought about asking if that was supposed to be a warning, but I didn't want to ruin the strange, fragile openness that had just landed in her voice. "What happened?" I asked. She lifted her mug and found it empty. "Nothing dramatic. He just stopped looking at me like you do." It was the kind of thing that shouldn't have been said, not to me, not this soon. But she didn't seem embarrassed. I shifted in my seat. "And you still see him?" "Only in pictures my kids post." She shrugged, but her eyes drifted somewhere far away. "I don't miss him. I miss who I was back then." The ache in her tone wasn't loud, but it lodged itself in me. I wanted to tell her I understood, even if my own past didn't look like hers. I'd never been married. Never even had anything last long enough to call serious. Most of my relationships ended the same way. I'd stop trying, or they would. I told myself I was fine with it. But sitting across from her, I wondered if that was a lie. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "And you? Anyone waiting for you at home?" "No," I said too quickly. "Not for a while." She raised an eyebrow. as if catching the slip in my voice. It's easier that way, I added. Easier, she repeated softly, as though testing the word. Or safer? Her question slipped under my skin. I looked away, tracing the rim of my coffee cup with my thumb. Both, maybe. I didn't tell her that part of me had already started cataloging her. The curve of her wrist, the way her voice dipped when she was amused, the faint perfume clinging to her sweater, like I was afraid of forgetting. The rain had stopped outside, but the window still held small beads of water that caught the light. She followed my gaze, then smiled faintly. You know, she said, when my kids were little, they used to think raindrops were racing each other down the glass. I found myself smiling back. Which one usually won? She glanced at me, eyes warm. The one you wanted to. It was such a simple answer, but it landed with the weight of something truer. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It felt like a pause we both wanted to stay inside. When she stood to leave, she brushed past my chair. Her hand, whether by accident or design, skimmed my shoulder. It was the smallest touch, and yet, when she walked away, I could still feel it. 2 days passed before I saw her again. Not that I hadn't thought about her. I had, more than I wanted to admit. Enough that when I spotted her across the grocery store, standing in front of the wine aisle, my chest tightened like I'd been caught doing something wrong. She noticed me almost instantly. No hesitation, just a small, knowing smile that made my stomach feel unsteady. You following me now? She asked when I came closer. Pure coincidence, I said, though we both knew coincidences didn't feel this loaded. She reached for a bottle, then stopped mid-motion. Her eyes flicked past my shoulder. I turned, just in time to see a woman in her 20s walking toward us. Blonde hair, oversized hoodie, earbuds in. My daughter, she whispered quickly. My pulse jumped. The girl passed without more than a quick glance at me. Does she? I started. No, she said too firmly. And she can't. The warning was clear, but so was the fact that she hadn't walked away. We ended up in the checkout line together, pretending to be strangers. She paid first, then paused at the exit, looking back at me. A quiet invitation. I followed her outside, keeping a step behind until we reached her car. This is risky, I said. Everything worth doing is, she replied, opening her trunk. Help me. I loaded her bags, my hands brushing hers just once. It was enough. Too much. When I straightened up, she was closer than before, close enough that I could see the faint freckles across her collarbone. Her eyes lingered on my mouth for half a second before she looked away. I shouldn't be here with you. But you are, I said. She didn't answer. Instead, she handed me a folded receipt. My number's on the back. In case you find another coincidence. I was still holding it when a voice called from across the lot. Mom, her daughter again, heading toward us with a carton of eggs in hand. My heart hammered. I stepped back quickly, as if the air between us had suddenly turned dangerous. She slipped into the driver's seat, starting the engine before her daughter reached the car. The window rolled down halfway. I'll see you, she said, not a question, not a promise, but something in between. The car pulled away, leaving me in the smell of exhaust and late summer heat, staring at the crumpled receipt in my palm. That night, I almost called. Almost. Instead, I sat on my bed, phone in hand, thumb hovering over her name, because I had already saved the number, and thought about the way her gaze had found mine in that parking lot. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. And that was more dangerous than either of us wanted to admit. I lasted 3 days before calling her. She answered on the second ring, her voice quiet, as if she were already bracing for something. Thought you'd wait longer, she said. So did I. There was a pause, the sound of her breathing soft in my ear. Where are you? I told her. She hesitated, then said, stay there. 15 minutes later, she slid into the booth across from me at the corner diner. She didn't take off her coat, didn't order coffee, just looked at me like she'd been running scenarios in her head all night, and none of them felt safe. I saw you yesterday, she said. You were with someone. Who? It took me a second to realize she meant my roommate, a woman I'd known since high school. She's just a friend. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. You didn't look like just friends. I leaned forward. And your daughter didn't think you looked like just strangers in that parking lot. That landed harder than I meant it to. She dropped her gaze to the table, fingers tracing the edge of a sugar packet. This is already harder than it should be, she said. I can't. She stopped, then started again. I can't have you in my head all the time. The words hit me in a place I didn't know was vulnerable. Then stop. Her eyes met mine, sharp, almost angry. You think I haven't tried? Silence. The clink of dishes somewhere behind us. The rain had started again outside, hitting the diner windows in quick, restless taps. She exhaled, slow and uneven. When you look at me, it's like you're seeing the version of me I thought I'd lost years ago. And I'm not sure I can survive losing that twice. Something in me broke at that. I wanted to tell her she wouldn't lose it, not with me. I wanted to reach across the table, take her hand, and make her believe it. Instead, I said, then don't push me away. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, the door to the diner opened and a burst of cold air swept in. I turned just enough to see a man step inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat that still carried droplets of rain. She froze. Who's that? I asked quietly. My ex-husband, she whispered. He spotted her instantly, his expression unreadable as he started toward our booth. I looked back at her. She wasn't breathing, and before I could decide whether to move, to speak, or to stand my ground, he was only 3 steps away. He stopped at our table, his gaze flicking between us. Didn't expect to see you here, he said to her, voice measured, polite in that sharp way that isn't really polite at all. Neither did I, she replied, matching his tone, but her fingers tightened around the sugar packet until it tore. I glanced between them, unsure if I should stand or stay seated. His eyes settled on me. And you are? Before I could speak, she cut in. A friend. The words sounded deliberate. Too deliberate. I tried not to show how it stung. He smiled faintly, as if cataloging me. Well, always good to make new friends, right? The silence after that felt loaded, like there were a dozen things none of us wanted to say in public. Finally, he nodded to her. We should talk. About Emily. Her daughter. Her posture stiffened. I'll call you. No, he said, eyes narrowing just enough for me to catch it. Now. She hesitated, then slid out of the booth. I'll be right back, she told me, without quite meeting my eyes. I watched them move toward the corner of the diner, their voices too low to hear. She glanced back once, not at me, but at the table, as if checking that I hadn't left. That's when my phone lit up. Unknown number. One text. You should walk away. She's not who you think she is. I looked toward the corner again. The man was talking, his expression tight, his hand gesturing sharply. She kept shaking her head, but her face was pale. Another text buzzed in. Ask her about Ryan. My chest tightened. I didn't know a Ryan. I didn't want to. They came back a minute later. She didn't sit down, just grabbed her coat from the seat. I have to go, she said. What's going on? I asked. Her jaw worked as if she were chewing on words she didn't want to release. It's nothing. It's not nothing, I said. She looked at me then, really looked, and I realized there was fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for me. Please, just don't call me for a while. And before I could stop her, she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her. I sat there for a long time, the rain streaking down the glass again, her half-empty coffee cup still in front of me. The receipt with her number was gone. I tried to stay away. I told myself she'd made her choice, or maybe she'd just made it for me. But every night, I caught myself scrolling to her name, my thumb hovering, waiting for something I couldn't name. 3 weeks passed before I saw her again. Not in a grocery store or a diner. At the park, of all places. She was sitting alone on a bench, hands tucked in her coat pockets, watching the late afternoon light fade through the bare branches. I almost turned back. Almost. Instead, I walked toward her, each step a dare. She looked up when I stopped in front of her. No surprise in her face, just a kind of tired relief. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. I got a text, I said, from someone, telling me to walk away. Her gaze didn't flinch. I know. Who's Ryan? Her lips parted, but the answer came slow. My son. The words caught me off guard. Your son. He died, she said simply. A year ago. I don't talk about it. Not even with my family. And when I met you. She broke off, pressing her hands together. When I met you, it felt like breathing again, and that terrified me. The air between us felt thinner. So you left. I thought I was protecting you, she said. From the mess I am. From my ex digging into your life. From my daughter finding out before I could explain. I told myself walking away was the right thing. But her voice cracked for the first time. I haven't stopped thinking about you. Something in me eased, but it wasn't enough to erase the weeks of silence. You could have just told me. And you could have stopped looking for me, she countered. We stared at each other, both right, both wrong. Finally, I sat beside her, close enough that our knees touched. I don't care about your ex. I don't care about the age thing. I don't care about what people say. I let out a shaky laugh. I just care about you. Her breath caught. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was steady. This can't be simple, she said. I don't want simple. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park. She didn't pull away, and I didn't let go. We sat there, not making promises, not pretending to know what came next, just holding on, knowing that for the first time since we'd met, neither of us was ready to walk away. The first time we met, it was rain tapping against a cafe window. Now, months later, it was sunlight breaking through the clouds, the kind that makes everything look softer than it really is. We were walking along the quiet edge of the park, the kind of place where no one asks questions. Her hand was in mine, not hidden, not flaunted, just there. Things weren't perfect. They weren't going to be. Her daughter still didn't know. Her ex had stopped texting me, but the memory of his stare across that diner table still hung between us sometimes. And Ryan, I'd never met him, never would, but I'd learned how to listen when she said his name. I didn't try to fix the hurt. I just stayed when it came. We'd found a way to see each other in the spaces life didn't touch. Late walks, quiet dinners, small moments that belonged only to us. She told me once, over takeout in her kitchen, that she used to hate silence after her marriage ended. It felt like failure, she said, pouring tea into mismatched mugs. Like something I should be filling with noise. And now? I asked. She smiled. Now it feels like breathing. There were still moments where I caught her watching me like she wasn't sure I was real. I understood it. I still found myself looking at her the same way. One evening, we ended up back at that same cafe where it all started. We took the same bench, ordered the same coffee. The rain started again, sliding down the glass in slow, uneven streaks. You ever think about that first day? I asked. Her mouth curved slightly. I think about what I almost missed. And what was that? You, she said, tilting her head in that same way, eyes steady on mine. I like how you look at me. Still, it was the same line she'd given me months ago, but this time it felt heavier, not flirtation, but truth. I didn't answer right away. I just reached for her hand across the table, and she didn't pull away. Outside, 2 raindrops slid down the glass together, neck and neck, before one finally pulled ahead. The one you wanted, she murmured, watching them disappear at the bottom of the pane. I didn't let go of her hand. I didn't think I ever would. We weren't fixed. We weren't certain. But we were here. And for now, that was enough.